Welcome one and welcome all. I got Dr. Ryan Hulla here, and we're going to break down some more research for you. As always, it's me, JJ, and I am just the co host here. And what we're going to look at today is the catastrophic effects. Can AI turn us into imbeciles? And what we're going to look at is the cognitive offload if you're using a lot of ChatGPT, other language models, and how you become reliant on that. So I'm going to go ahead and let Dr. Hulla take this over. He's got his PhD in experimental psychology. He's a biostatistician, and he's going to break down this study for us. And uh, I'll go ahead and let him take it from here.
Yeah, this study is a little bit different than the last one we looked at, with different topic for sure, but also the style of this research. So the last study we looked at involved sugar dating, and it involved original research, which means that they collected their own data to develop their own support or not support for their hypotheses. This study doesn't collect their own data here. This is a research, or this is a review article where they review research to discuss existing hypotheses and whether the research in the literature supports or doesn't support those hypotheses. So uh, different type of research article here that we're reviewing, but still very interesting. And review articles are very helpful in understanding a topic. So the authors here, the introduction is very heavy on the development of AI models, chatbots specifically. They talk about how ChatGPT is, it's a large language model based on deep learning, which is designed for processing and analyzing natural data, language data. But essentially, uh, ChatGPT was propelled by AI, to process language, and that ChatGPT 4 can do more than obviously ChatGPT 3.5, which is the free version, and ChatGPT 4 can go as far as maintain voice conversations. So they're kind of just talking about how far AI has come, chatbots have come, and how it went from uh, what they call a transition from recurrent neural networks to transformer algorithms. That is what propelled chat gpt specifically. So um, they discuss next kind of what the public concerns have been with AI. And um, right now, ChatGPT, it's publicly accessible. Anybody can use it. It's free. And it can be applied over various domains. These domains can be technical skills, such as coding, personal communication, such as emails, um, help in educating, so people getting help for their homework, or even teachers using it to help lesson plan,
Hmm.
research. ChatGPT can pull a whole bunch of information for a topic together very quickly in a coherent, organized way. And we've seen AI; it can be very creative. As we can see, can generate images, it can generate video, um, and people can even use AI for ethical decision making when asking AI what decisions possibly they should make. Um, so, all these things that AI can help with do bring concerns to the public, um, involving ethical and philosophical things that need to be considered. Um, so, for example, there is a lot of focus on the problems of control in various contexts that involve social, political, labor, and military spheres. And just for example, think about it this way: if the military, if they are or not using AI, I don't know if they are right now, but let's say they are using AI. Um, they may be, AI may be used in the future or is currently to make decisions on, where to drop a bomb. Now, you know, is AI 100% accurate? No. Like, it's not yet. Will it ever be? I don't know. But is it okay for AI to make the decision on if it should drop a bomb on, a town because it suspects that there is some kind of threat or terror threat that is there? You know, um, that's a very
Well, it's a
ethical
lot
thing to.
easier to blame the AI than anybody else to step up and take responsibility for the
Right.
error.
Exactly. I kind of worry about that as well. Will it become a scapegoat for, military to use, or, governments to use to say, oh, sorry, we leveled your city, but the AI just made an inaccurate judgment. So our bad, like, I
Yeah,
don't
can't
know.
take AI to court, can't lock it up.
I mean, yeah, there's definitely, should AI even be considered in the military? I mean, that is definitely a question that needs to be looked at, but I think it's going to be used in the military, and we're not going to get much say in it, unfortunately.
Yep, yep, yep.
Um, so that leads to, they're talking about how AI may impact jobs. So uh, that's another political aspect of this. How many jobs are going to be gone because of AI and its ability to, do these jobs, and what that may do to the economy. And there's been talks about maybe implementing UBI to offset some of the AI's ability to do jobs. But yeah, we're going to go ahead, and is the bar graph, go ahead and bring the bar graph up real quick if you could, JJ.
I got
um,
it.
and
Yeah.
then we'll bring that chart up here in a second. So, in the past, technological advancements have mostly impacted labor work. So, for example, like
Hmm.
farming, when machines came into play, the human labor for farming went away to a greater degree. Factories, when, machines could be automated, the need for human labor in factories went away, and that caused job displacement. Uh,
Hmm.
it's different with AI. This is the Brooking analysis that this is they're looking at the typical education level of individuals that will be impacted by AI. So this was their education levels recorded in 2017. So what they're finding is that it's really those with college degrees that are going to have the most exposure to AI here, and just AI disrupting their job field. So at the top of these bars are what we call odds ratios. And essentially, how you can read this here is, if you look at bachelor's degree there at the top of the bar, it says 0.21. Essentially, that's saying that it is 21% more likely that if you hold a bachelor's degree, your job is going to be impacted by AI. If you hold a graduate or professional degree, you are 15% more likely to have your job impacted by AI. Where if you have less than a high school degree, you have a almost 0% chance, higher likelihood of your job being impacted by AI. So you can see in this chart that it is really the white collar jobs that are going to be most severely impacted by this disruption that's coming to the workforce, or work, in the working environment. So
Which
go ahead and
makes sense because most people with the higher level of education, they're doing more digital work. So
yeah.
it's just easier for AI to do that and it's cheaper, right? Because if you're doing any physical labor, you're going to have maintenance on AI robots and you're going to have a lot more to deal with there. Whereas something like coding, It's easier to just get AI to do that for you, or draft up emails or whatever it is that you're working on. So that makes sense to me. That
Hmm.
this doesn't surprise me one bit.
Yeah, and personally, I've used AI to to develop templates of code for R, which is a software that I use to analyze statistical data. Where you used to have to go find this code, make sure it's okay. You can just ask ChatGPT, hey, can you provide me a code to run whatever analysis I want to run in R, and it will bring the template straight up. You just have to insert your own variables. So and it will do the same thing with programming. And then
Website design.
yeah, people with in other degrees, like journalism and writing, or any job, like if you look at this chart here, market research that you have up. um, Market research analyst, I've been one of those. I was a consumer market research analyst for some time, and this I was actually a market research analyst why ChatGPT was released to the public. And we actually started the company I worked for started using this started using ChatGPT to assist in writing our products. So we would say, hey, we want to talk, we want to write about this this aspect of this technological innovation in this product. And then we would have ChatGPT pull all the information about that technological aspect of that product, and then it would be a great start to writing our report. So, and you can see here, market research analysts and marketing specialists, they have an extremely high exposure to AI. And these are odds ratios on the far right here. What that
Hmm.
3.03 is saying, that if you are a market research analyst, um, you are 300 times more likely to be exposed to AI disrupting your job than um, all other occupations that are not on this list. So you can see all other occupations, 0.00. Um, sales managers, they're 277% more likely to be exposed. Computer programmers, 196%. Personal finance, 133% more likely. Then you get to the health, like registered nurse, 44% more likely. AI probably isn't going to be able to replace everything a nurse can do, but they'll probably be able to use it to gather information about maybe what's happening to a patient. Like, think about biosensors being put on a patient and then AI interpreting what those sensors are reporting. So, like, if
Quick
someone's
diagnosis. Yeah.
right, right, yeah. So that's probably going to be, how the health industry is, medical professionals are exposed to AI. Not exactly job killers, but they will be exposed to it. Um, not really a big increase for, well, web developers is actually surprisingly low. So,
Yeah, I'm surprised about that because, I've used AI to develop
mhm.
websites, and it works great and it's easy to do. But, I guess they the person doing the web developing job can just incorporate AI into what they do rather than it just taking their job completely.
Yeah, and there's actually some personal creativity that needs to be done to web
Hmm.
developing. So, like AI, like, unless I don't know if it's smart enough yet for you to like describe in really high detail what you want, and it can pop out the code for it yet, for web developing. But yeah, so maybe because of the element of creativity that's needed in a web developer, maybe that's why AI is not going to be impacting it as much. Um,
That surprises me. I figured that would be a
uh,
higher percentage.
I agree with you there. Maybe if you just want a simple website, but if you are hiring a web developer, you probably want something pretty intricate.
Hmm.
Um, then you have your technical skill jobs, welders, plumbers, not really being affected as much. Uh, dental assistants, food workers in
Cooks.
restaurants, they've
Yeah,
got
that doesn't
negative
surprise me.
they've got negative, you know, uh, odds of being exposed to AI. So, in short, here, this is going to be a disruptor for the white collar, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens here with these people that get displaced from their jobs as Chat GPT and other AI um, you know, programs are quickly evolving, doing more than what we ever could imagine. So th- that that
Yeah,
so
go
that
ahead. Please like, subscribe to this video because I'm in sales, and you see that's the second one up there at the top. So please help me stay employed. Like, subscribe, and share this video. So, because my job is at high risk here.
yeah, lucky for me, I'm technically, I'm a statistician and researcher, and that's not on this list, but I can tell you that I personally have used ChatGPT to assist, and who knows what can happen. It's a very unsure future. So everybody,
And it's going to be
please,
volatile too.
yeah,
It'll happen quick, and companies might overcompensate or be overconfident in their AI and then realize, oh no, we shouldn't have let all these people go. So I think it's going to create a lot of volatility in the job market.
yeah, yeah, I agree. Um, all right. So those are two of the areas that the public has kind of focused on, policymakers have kind of focused on with AI. Um, another area that has been very controversial is AI being used in any kind of justice. So basically, by you being used for crime detection by police forces. Um, Unfortunately, AI has not really performed well in assisting in crime, and there's this group called the Innocence Project, who's actually been on Joe Rogan several times. They try to clear people that have been wrongly convicted of crimes. Usually, they've been, worked over by, prosecutors, state prosecutors, where evidence has been withheld, and for whatever reason, because justice system is corrupt, as if anything that's political. And the Innocence Project makes it their mission to bring these evidence to light to get these people out of prison or off death row. So there has been some cases already where AI has wrongly convicted innocent people. The Innocence Project worked on 7 in 2023 of such cases. Um, which involved wrongful arrests due to AI. And some of these this is pretty bad. So they do note that AI, when being used in crime detection and used as evidence for criminals, that it seems that investigators get induced tunnel vision with AI. So if the AI makes, if it believes this person was involved or makes a suggestion of a high likelihood that this person was involved in the crime, then that kind of seems to be what the investigators only focus on. Um,
Hmm.
so there was this case called the Mike Williams, or with a gentleman named Mike Williams, where AI triangulated him as a shooter to a murder based off sounds of gunfire through microphones, right? So the AI is supposed to be trained in picking up gunfire. Um, so based on this triangulation of AI picking up gunfire sounds, they suggested that this guy was the murderer. Police never established a motive or any evidence for why he would have been involved in the shooting, and he spent a year in jail until his case was dismissed by the Innocence Project when they showed video evidence of his car going through an intersection at the apparent time of the shooting. So, indicating like how could he be going through this intersection if he was supposed to be shooting someone at this time? So, um, and just on further note, I want to say that the Chicago police force quit using their AI detection system. They did not renew their contract with it for the following in for 2024 because it had such problems detecting gunfire. There was a lot of um, false positives for gunfire. So if somebody like slammed a car door, it would detect it as a gunfire. If a car backfired, it would detect it as a gunfire. So,
Yeah, that
there's a
that really does sound like a gunshot.
yeah, yeah.
Car
So there's
backfiring, like I can barely tell. I duck. I'm like, oh no,
and,
but
and
then I realize, okay,
police would go out to these areas and there would be no evidence of a shooting, so that the police were the Chicago police force decided to hold off on the AI for criminal investigations at least until it can improve. Another case
hmm
was a woman who was 8 months pregnant that was wrongfully arrested for carjacking due to flawed facial recognition. I mean, if you're a cop and you're seeing a woman 8 months pregnant, um, I I'm not saying they're incapable of jacking a car, but it's be a pretty difficult task, with being 8 months pregnant. So anyway, uh, the it was found that the facial recognition was wrong, and this has been another issue is that a lot of the data that the AI has been getting for the algorithm for facial detection, uh, they're getting more exposure to Anglo faces, because uh, that is right now 60% of the American population. But also wherever it's developed, like let's say it's developed in Utah or something, where like 90% of the population is white, it's going to be exposed to more Anglo faces. And then that entails, well, it will be better to detect differences within Anglo faces, but versus other minorities, black and Asian, it's not going to have as much information to detect differences with. So that is
yeah,
another reason
smaller
that we're
sample size. Yeah,
smaller sample size. So it needs more data so it's able to detect these differences. So it, uh, it the problem is the
AI is
state
not
has
ready to solve crime yet.
right. The state has been really ramming people with this technology, even though it's been shown to not be accurate. And that the over reliance on the technology with law enforcement can ultimately displace, real policing strategies so in a sense, ultimately, will AI outsource humans in their job?
I hope not. I
Will
hope
a
not. I
will
hope
AI
if I
will
get prosecuted by AI cop, forget that, man. That
will,
is
will
next level Black Mirror dystopia type stuff, man.
yeah, yeah, will it be judge, jury, and executioner one day? Like when we get charged with something, will we go up in front of an AI judge and it will determine
Forget that,
based
man.
on some probability if we committed the crime or not? You
I need
know,
that opportunity to give the judge my puppy eyes and have that
uh,
last human connection with them before they convict me, please.
and then you got to look on an ethical scale, right? Because they're talking about AI being used for ethical decisions. Um, what if we ask AI if we should implement some policy or program, but it's programmed with a lot of bias in one direction? So, for example, if I am making policy for making more roads, right? So I can get goods and services to a town that's maybe not, it's been cut off or it doesn't have much access to, economic movement because it's cut off, because it doesn't have good roads or transportation to transfer goods or receive goods. But I put this into a decision making into an AI, and it's like, no, don't build that road because of the climate impact, right? It's saying the climate impact due to building this road does outweighs the
The
goods and
economic.
services. Yeah, basically of relieving these people of poverty, right? Um, do we want AI making that decision? Especially since the science on climate change, like human impacting it, climate is pretty strong, but the level to which climate may, uh, the impact of that climate change being catastrophic is certainly not settled, right? So, is it a risk, or the risk reward could be biased that the AI is calculating. And we can give you an example of this with the
Oh,
Google
yeah, we
AI,
can.
yeah, the Google AI Gemini, on how the AI is not, it's not neutral. It definitely implements its programming from its creators. So, for those that aren't familiar with, big tech culture, the policies that those in Silicon Valley typically support. It's uh, very, very liberal leaning generally. And so AI's programmers went ahead and they made, their own version of like ChatGPT called Gemini. Well, when people asked, hey, can you show us images of the founding fathers? It brings up these guys. So, you know, the founding fathers of America.
Wow.
Yeah. George
Yeah.
Washington,
Yeah, look at that.
yeah, doesn't look very Anglo in that picture. And Benjamin Franklin
Is that
certainly
is that
doesn't.
Ben Franklin over there
I think
in the
Ben
bottom
Franklin.
right
Yeah,
little?
I think that's supposed to be Ben
I didn't know
Franklin.
he was Korean or
Yeah.
Japanese. I don't
Yeah.
know. Like I
So,
don't even know.
um, yeah. And then, like, if you typed in show me images of Vikings, um, you know, they're not your typical what you would picture Anglo Vikings from Scandinavia that the AI Gemini uh, came up with. Uh, Came up with very. I mean, it looks like people that would be from, African
No, yeah,
continent. Yeah,
sorry, man. Vikings, yeah,
and
they're just.
yeah, yeah,
I'm sorry, but they're
right,
just not. That's not what Vikings were. That's not what they look like. And this is an inaccurate depiction of history. And whether history is inclusive or not, that's not for AI to decide, or the
right.
programmers who program the AI.
Absolutely. So this is like, should we have AI making ethical decisions? So far, no, because it definitely has its own human bias in it. Now,
Exactly.
Google came out and said that they realized this was a mistake. They're really sorry. And what it found out it was doing is they had programmed the AI when looking up anybody to bring in their package of DEI,
Diversity,
diversity, equity,
diversity
inclusion.
and inclusion.
Yeah, so literally it was almost impossible to generate any picture of a white person if you asked for any image of a person in this. Uh,
And it's
uh,
funny because I saw this circulating on social media, and I
mm,
immediately tried it. I have a Google Pixel phone, so I
uh,
immediately tried it, and they had already taken it down. So I wasn't
yeah,
even able. It told me I'm not generating any images.
yeah,
It just pulled pre-existing images for me
yeah. They're gonna fix
that
this.
were accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they're gonna fix this, which is great. Now it's unfortunate, but Google lost $90 billion in investments, that from this mistake. So it's not, they'll be okay. They're too big to fail, but it was definitely costly. And I'm sure whatever programmers, put in the DEI package here for looking up, any form of
Goodbye,
person.
sayonara. You're
Yeah,
no
they're
longer employed.
exactly. So,
AI didn't take your job. You lost your own job.
right. Um, with that being said, what are the author's concerns of AI? Um, so they believe that there's been too much focus on these policy factors of how AI can impact the things we just talked about: social, political, military, crime detection, and not enough focus on what it may do to human cognition. Um, so actually, the authors that wrote this are biologists. So they are definitely concerned with how human cognition may be impacted and how this may impact human evolution here forward. Um, there are so they're going to tell us there's three hypotheses that bear out for how this may impact um, human cognition and evolution. But they also wanted to mention that there's a transhumanist perspective here, and for those of you that are not familiar with the transhumanism, it's the idea that humans and technology are destined to be one. Uh, they have typically, they don't want any guardrails on technology. They just want it to let it loose and have it integrated into us. So this would be something like Neuralink, where one
Hmm.
day, I mean, I don't know if the Neuralink is in the first person yet, or if it's about to be. I know it's been approved to be um, installed into people, but essentially, what the transhumanist perspective has is that you have to question if people are going to get this stuff put into them, like Neuralink, and if it gives them such great cognitive advantages, will it be necessary to have Neuralink installed just to compete in the job market? So, um,
Oh my goodness.
are we at the whims of, no matter what, if we want to survive or have any kind of respectable living conditions, will we have to have some kind of technology integrated into, our brain? Um, and then ultimately, we're not sure how Neuralink will impact the brain long term. Will it decrease our brain working power because the technology component of it is doing so much of the work? Or will it increase our brain, power because it's gives us so much more access to information, and it can offload some of the tasks that are cognitively fatiguing that we don't necessarily need to do. So, with that being said, the authors will also want to note how culture influences our cognition and how technology and culture are intertwined. They go hand in hand. So, the for example, the theory of material engagement suggests that human evolution is influenced by its interaction with technology, which ultimately impacts brain development and our cognitive abilities. And I'm going to give an example about regarding this later on about the stone throwing hypothesis, which is all about how humans evolved with one huge reason because we threw stones. And I know that sounds silly, but there's a good argument for it. So, regarding how material engagement impacts human evolution. When they talk about material engagement, they're talking about engagement with materials like stones and wood and how we used them as tools. There's three main hypotheses um, involving the cognitive evolution of humans, which are ecological intelligence, social intelligence, and cultural intelligence. So the ecological intelligence proposes that cognition evolves by us trying to overcome the challenges of nature. So, how do we solve the problem of it being too hot? How do we solve the problem of it being too cold? How do we solve the problem of getting over that river? How do we solve the problem of getting down from the trees when as early hominids, right? So, figuring out how to solve these problems in order to get, more food, energy is how we evolved. Social intelligence suggests that our intelligence is a result of overcoming social obstacles, meaning us not fighting, but working together in order to build, in order to form coalitions, in order to fight off predators, in order for us to get more resources collectively. Um, and then cultural intelligence hypothesis suggests that cognitive evolution stems from the use of cultural artifacts influence on cognitive processes. So the use of the stone as a weapon, the use of fire, uh, the use of building, a bridge or a raft or whatever to get across water, the building of a shelter. So all three of these play a role. Not one of these hypotheses is a standalone reason for human evolution or cognitive evolution in humans. But what is the percentage for each of these three? Well, there was a study done by Gonzalez, Ferrero, and Garden where they built a model on what causes human brain development. And they based their model off metabolism of humans and the energy extraction needed to for humans to evolve in the way we did evolve. They took in a lot of factors into this model, such as the typical weight of a human when we first started evolving to now, how much energy we would need, the rate of our metabolism, um, and essentially what their model concluded was that it's likely that about 60% of the human brain developed due to ecological challenges. So, such as trying to find a way to keep warm, cross rivers, cross a desert.
Hmm.
30% of our cognitive or our evolution to where we are today is likely from social interactions with through cooperative hunting, cooperative, farming, being cooperative building, governing. It takes the brain a lot of energy to socialize, and humans are the most social creatures on the planet. Um, that and there is a correlation between how social a creature is to how good how, on and to how strong their cognitive capacity is. So, and that doesn't mean it's that way for every animal, but there is a trend where we see that animals that are more social, that have bigger social groups, um, like humans out of the apes have the biggest tribes. Like we can say strongly that humans can kind of have about 100 people in their tribe where they would know everybody comfortably and they would know them well. And there's research to support this, by the way, where chimpanzees, it's more in the realm of like 30, and then gorillas, it's less than that. So um, anyway, and then 10% of the human brain development can be attributed to competition challenges. So they're specifically talking about intergroup competition. So like humans, a group of humans competing with other groups of humans. So the developments of war devices, uh, strategies to gain advantage on rivals, forming coalitions to take down rival groups. So Humans are a
The
very
space race, that
right,
came to my mind.
exactly. Yep. So, you know, any sporting competition that humans used to do, right? Humans are a very competitive and aggressive species. Um, and our current culture shows that, and our lineage is even way more aggressive in our history. So it's not surprising that the competition challenges contribute to a good chunk of our brain development. And if you think about it, the only people that survived were the ones that cooperated. The only people that survived were the ones that were able to make coalitions, the ones that were able to work together to bring food, the ones that were able to work together to build a bridge to get over that river. If you decided not to work with, your group, you probably didn't live long enough to pass on your genes. So, with that being said, they found that there was no real contribution between individual competition within a group. So, like you versus your neighbor in your tribe, that didn't really contribute to any brain development in their model. Makes sense because if you were always causing issues within your group, you probably got ostracized. Now, with that being said, there's obviously a lot of overlap between the ecology, social, and cooperative aspects of brain development. You can't really completely separate them. And cultural factors likely played a significant role in facilitating the brain expansion and cognitive development through tool development and shelter improvement, and also creating things like language and art, like all that stuff, creating language, creating art, creating culture, music, like that takes a lot of brain energy. And you have to have extra caloric intake to be able to develop that, to develop art, to develop technical improvements in your shelter. So there there is no question that humans had to find ways to get the energy needed to gain the cognitive abilities to develop um, aspects of culture. So with that being said, the stone throwing hypothesis, which I mentioned earlier, is kind of a good encompassing example of how all these play a role. So, the stone throwing hypothesis suggests that human evolution was kind of propelled by the ability to throw projectiles, stones, spears, whatever it may be. But early hominids would be throwing stones. And how this was involved in such it was such a major component in brain development was first that early hominids had to find a way at some point to get down from the trees to get better energy resources. So, other food that would have more caloric reward. Um, if humans were only eating fruit and trees and they never came down to get a protein source, a fat source, there was no way they would have developed the brains they have today. You need, uh, you know, percentages of fat and saturated fats, unsaturated fats, amount of protein to be able to develop a brain the size of a human's in proportion to their body. So one way they hypothesize humans did this is when coming down from trees, they were very vulnerable, and to ward off predators, you know, th- such as let's say a lion,
Hmm.
they would throw stones. Now, one human throwing a stone is not very effective, um, and it's very risky because if they miss, they're in trouble. And when early hominids started throwing, they were not good at it. In fact, we know that humans have evolved by throwing things because the arm of a human actually goes back, much farther than the arm of any other hominid, indicating that we evolved with the ability to to throw objects. And it makes sense why we're so interested in throwing objects, as in sports, football,
Baseball,
baseball,
football, you name it.
basketball, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, instead of one human throwing a stone, what was necessary are early hominid. These weren't humans yet. The hominids all had to throw stones together to scare off predators in a coordinated fashion. And in order to do this, they had to socialize in some manner. So they had to communicate in some way. They weren't using language yet, more than likely. Grunts, eye movements, whatever. Exactly. To throw these stones in a coordinated fashion to scare off predators, so I can go over to the nearest termite mound and bring the termites or whatever it was the food source. I'm probably grossly oversimplifying this, but anyway, this in turn, there is a motor cognitive exchange, or sorry, shouldn't have said exchange. There is cognitive development relates to motor skill development. So, for example, cognitive abilities require uh, accurate throwing of a stone. So, if I throw a stone in one manner and I always miss, I never change how I throw the stone, you know, I will likely not survive. But if I am able to change how I'm throwing the stone and I realize, like, okay, throwing it this way, I'm hitting more than throwing this way, I am doing some kind of cognitive development in order to develop this motor skill. So, and it also leads to better development in spatial awareness, hand eye coordination, and problem solving. So motor skills development and cognitive development go hand in hand. And you see this in children. As children become more coordinated, they also become more cognitively able. This in turn made humans more efficient in hunting and gathering resources, or early hominids, which gave them more access to higher caloric food, which in turn gave the body the resources to increase brain volume, essentially. So that is how the stone throwing hypothesis, sets up pretty nicely on how humans evolved. Now, do I believe that only humans only evolved to what they are today because of throwing stones? No, there's probably other factors. Does this hypothesis make sense of maybe give a good reason for why humans evolved to the way they are today? Yeah, I think it provides a pretty sound reason. Um, but this adds on to something that is known as the ratchet effect. All right, the ratchet effect is the cycle of how humans gradually improved tools and transferred knowledge generation to generation. So humans accumulated making better tools, having more knowledge by passing the information on generation to generation, and that's why we are technologically evolving more and more each decade, because that knowledge is transferred. And then they talk about how this relates to ChatGPT, how, its first version of a chatbot was in 1960, and then how the knowledge has been, of the ratchet effect has built upon it, constantly since the 1960s to what we have today. Now, um, as discussed before, um, culture obviously plays a big role in how it determines cognitive development. Um, the authors now are trying connect that to like how ChatGPT may impact our cognitive development. So they give examples of more recent um, technological advances and how it's changed uh, our cognition in some way. And they make note that we do know that areas of the brain change based on um, new technologies. So, for example, if you went back 40 years and you told someone, picture a cell phone, they would have no idea what you were talking about and they couldn't even picture it in their mind. Today, you say, picture a cell phone, and everybody can do it, a smartphone, right? They picture an iPhone. Um, and that shows like, the brain it's transformed in some way to where it can visually create a representation of a cell phone. Also, they want to make the connection that tools that humans have created, uh, they integrate into the brain as with sensory information. So for example, when pencils and writing utensils were created, areas of the brain were developed to learn how to hold that pencil, right, with high dexterity coordination. When a car was, has as humans that as we use cars, we have an ability called um, proprioception, and that is our awareness in space. Well, if you are a veteran car driver and you drive often, you expand your proprioception to the vehicle itself. So you know where the vehicle is in space. People that are new to driving and they don't drive cars often or are rarely in cars, they have terrible proprioception of where the car is in space. And they're very highly likely to bump into things with the car because they have no awareness. It's like a newborn, has very poor proprioception of where its limbs are in space, and they're always hitting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so essentially, this technology becomes extension of ourselves. Smartphones, for example, even go further. They're like an extension of our consciousness. We have offloaded a lot of
Mm-hmm.
cognitive tasks already to smartphones, such as birth dates. How many of us actually know the birth dates of a lot of our friends? Well, a lot of us don't. We just have it offloaded in our smartphone where it reminds us through a social media notification, or we put it in the calendar ourselves. That way, we don't have to
Mm-hmm.
remember it, and we just get that reminder every year. Um, I can't tell you how many times I've taken notes by texting myself. So I offload things I need to remember, my grocery list, things I need to do, tasks I need to complete, something I saw that I want to talk about later on. I text it to myself, and it's stored on my phone. I don't have to deal with the cognitive demand of trying to remember it later on. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Doing math calculations. All this stuff has been offloaded into technology. Spell check has been
Oh my
offloaded
God,
onto this.
that's my biggest one. I can't spell anything anymore. I'm gonna be
Right,
real.
right.
I do not. I was a great speller going through, um, middle school into early high school. But as I started texting and, writing more via computer, I've offloaded my ability to spell.
Yeah,
It's bad. I am not good at spelling anymore. And I have to rely on getting the first few letters right and let my smartphone figure it out from there or my spell check. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
uh,
How many times have you been?
my ability. Mhm.
How many times have you been like writing something and you know um, the spell check on Word doesn't know exactly what you're writing because it's too far off, and then you're
Oh,
like,
because you're too far off. Yeah, that
right,
happens.
and then you just type
Yeah,
it into your phone and you're like, oh, got it, because you
yeah,
just
or I'll Google it.
yeah, or you'll Google it. Yeah, whichever's more convenient for you.
Yeah.
So the argument is will ChatGPT be the same? Uh, you know, like we're already seeing in children, like young children, you hand them a smartphone and they almost know how to operate it at a real young age, like before they can talk.
Hmm.
You know, and they like a young child can operate like that before they're able to talk, can operate a smartphone better than a very, an elderly person that's maybe, not been exposed to a smartphone. So, is there already some cognitive change and brain development occurring by using ChatGPT in the same way of these other technological advances? So, they talk about how this may be a good thing or a bad thing. First, as a cognitive enhancer, the authors do note that it could be this ChatGPT, this AI technology, could have a transformative impact like the internet. But unlike the internet gave us access to information, which ultimately made work easier. ChatGPT, they know takes us a step further. Um, like where the internet and smartphones aid in cognitive tasks, um, ChatGPT, even though smartphones and Google aid in the cognitive task, it still requires individuals to have some kind of attentional and executive skills to process the information effectively. For example, if I search for an article on Google, I can't have it summarize the article for me. I still need to read the article and summarize it myself. ChatGPT, I can just say, "Hey, summarize this article," and it will summarize it for me. I don't have to do that executive
Hmm.
task anymore. So, um, AI chatbots, like ChatGPT, are kind of like where Google and smartphones are the technological advancement to get you access to much greater information. AI chatbots are kind of like the step beyond that and able to organize the information easier in a way. So, uh, they the authors also want to talk about they talk about how the ability for the chatbots to do this executive functioning, um, it's better than humans at it in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it
So
is. People
you
don't
know
want to admit it, but it is.
Right. Humans, we have limited energy, we get mental fatigue. So when it comes to tasks that like require summarizing an article, we may start off strong in summarizing it, but as we get more mentally fatigued, we start summarizing it less and less and more surface level as we go on. An AI chatbot doesn't experience that. It summarizes it in depthly the entire way through. I know, for example, that they've done research on AI looking at contracts and giving it to a lawyer and giving it to an AI chatbot. The AI chatbot is more accurate at finding, important errors in the contract than the lawyer. You know, so um, in a way, uh, can this just ultimately enhance our abilities to avoid cognitive fatigue, but and increase our work quality overall? So that's kind of the um, cognitive enhancer possibility here. Um, but they do want to talk about how the long-term impact is unknown. So um,
Yeah, we can't know yet. It's too new.
yeah, yeah,
I don't even think we know the full impacts of cell phones and internet yet fully.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we are seeing that there looks to be some mental effects on children for sure. Um,
Hmm.
for better or for worse. They do say that, the cognitive offloading phenomenon of technology has nothing to do with one's own cognitive abilities. So, for example, just because someone is really smart does not mean they're going to offload any less than someone that's not as smart. That cognitive offloading is completely dependent on the access to the technology itself. So, if me and Elon Musk, for example, have the same access to ChatGPT, we are both offloading the, just as much, right? even though Elon Musk is much smarter than me. So, uh, anyway, they just want to make note that just because Elon Musk is, smarter than me, he's not going to be cognitively offloading any less, as long as he has the same amount of access to the technology. Um, this is typically because people have prefer the path of least resistance. This is for energy efficiency, which leads them to want to do this cognitive offloading. Now, does this offloading have positive or negative benefits? Yet to be seen, but we'll discuss it here further. So there's three hypotheses that the authors talk about when this with what AI offloading may how it may impact humans. There is a zero sum adjustment hypothesis, which essentially means that it's not going to impact us cognitively a whole lot. Um, Essentially, it's saying it's not going to impact us at all, cognitively at all, or if it does, the negative and positives will outweigh themselves,
Hmm.
basically causing a wash. There's a cognitive soft adjustment hypothesis, which entails that the AI will slowly like integrate into our workspace, our smartphone spaces, our social spaces, and that it will slowly degrade our cognitive abilities, and we won't really notice it affecting our cognitive abilities. And there's possible arguments to be made that technology's done that, has been doing that already. We'll talk about that. And then there's a cognitive heart adjustment hypothesis, which suggests that it's doom and gloom, baby. Like, AI's coming in. It's, it's going to destroy our abilities to do anything, and we're going to become subservient to the AI. It's going to make all our decisions, and we're not going to have any thoughts for ourselves. So, for the zero sum hypothesis adjustment, there are arguments. The arguments for this hypothesis being supported is that um, the AI chatbot may have a cognitive impact similar to other technologies like calculators and computers. So, the use of calculators and computers obviously offloaded a lot of meaningless tasks that
Yeah,
you
definitely.
right that we can get answers to problems and solve problems in less complex ways, less demand of the brain with these devices. Um, but it didn't really impact humans' cognitive abilities overall, and it didn't impact IQ overall. And there's some research to support this. So there is something called the Flynn effect, and it comes from a researcher, last name Flynn, who monitored IQs across generations, and this is mostly in Western countries. So the data for other countries and other cultures could be different. In fact, some evidence has shown that it is different in other countries, but overall, the Flynn effect in Western cultures showed that each decade IQ has increased by 3 points. Now, the reason you don't realize this is because IQ is a standardized scale, meaning that no matter what, IQ is always 100. So, for somebody for example, in 2000, that has an IQ of 100, if they were to get tested in 1990, would have an IQ of 103. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Someone in 1990 that had IQ of 100, if they were to get tested in 2000, would have an IQ of 97, roughly, right? These are general trends. Doesn't mean that would happen to everybody, but in general, that is what the Flynn effect is saying. So, as a whole, human IQ has been increasing about 3 points per decade. Um, as studied in Western countries. Uh, they can't really point out a single contributor to why this is, but it's likely due to a combination of easier access to more calories, less acute stress from the environment. And when I mean acute stress, I mean like life threatening things such as predators, violence. Uh, obviously, chronic stress is another thing, that humans have to deal with. But, and access to information. So we have complete more access to information than we did several decades ago. Um, for example, an IQ test does have like a semantic knowledge component. So in the 1940s, a question on an IQ test, and I saw this as an example in one of the courses I took, was if you were at the if you were at a location on Earth and um, and it I want to say that every direction you looked, you are not facing north. So basically indicating you are at the North Pole, right?
Yeah.
What color would the bear be that you would see? A polar bear if
White.
you're at the North Pole, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
white. So in the 1940s, a lot of people had no access to even know what a polar bear was. So that was but if you were to say if you're at the North Pole and you see a bear, what color would it be? Almost everybody today would know that it's a polar bear. So just the access to information increases your IQ. Um, though there is some research that has shown that cognitive abilities in the United States has dropped between 2006 to 2018. Oddly enough, that is kind of when the internet started becoming heavy used, and the iPhone first came out in 2007. So um, they've seen a decrease in US adults in IQ, in verbal reasoning, matrix reasoning, letter and number series, and you know they you could correlate that maybe this is due to this access to technology. Now, is it due to cognitive offloading? That's hard to say. It could be due to physical health. We do know humans have gotten a lot less healthy in the last several decades, especially since 2006. Obesity is very high in the US and has risen substantially. We know that health and obesity is related to cognitive abilities and your ability to inflammation from being obese impacts cognitive function. We have a lot of environmental exposures that have increased to BPAs and BPSs and phthalates in general that have been shown to impact cognitive function. Um, and let's not talk about how in 2019, for example, is this going to be worse because of COVID situation from 2020 to 2022 or three when lockdowns were going on. Um, and I can tell you from my experience, I worked at a school district for some time doing research. There was definitely a noticeable decrease in cognitive abilities in students after the COVID pandemic. So, is this cognitive decline going to be exacerbated? So there's some interesting arguments here on what ChatGPT may do to human cognitive abilities. The authors do want to know, oddly enough, that through 2006 and 2018, that even though they saw a decrease in a lot of IQ components, such as like I listed earlier, there was one component we saw an improvement on, and that was three-dimensional space rotation. Um, and they hypothesized that this could be due to video game exposure because it
Go
doesn't make,
figure. Yeah.
yeah, because a lot of three-dimensional rotation that cognitive function would have to probably would be related to sports like shooting a basketball, throwing a football. And we do know that there's not more kids doing those activities these days. Like physical
No,
activity
it's less and less.
has
Yeah.
reduced, but video gameplay has increased. So there's a good, that's an interesting suggestion there that I think they're probably spot on. Um, Overall, there's limited research on the cognitive transfer between skills and technology, including AI chatbots. And it's controversial. It's controversial. The research, it's going to be politicized, obviously, because there's going to be camps in politics that want AI use. And there's going to be camps that are much more resistant to AI use. But the authors suggest that for the zero sum hypothesis here, that like other technologies where you get positive and negative benefits, that it's essentially going to be a wash on cognitive function. So they think that there is going to be some negative impacts and some positive impacts, which will eventually wash on cognitive function. That's what the authors they suggest, but they do want to go into detail on these other hypotheses and the support behind them. So the soft adjustment hypothesis, which I mentioned earlier, is the hypothesis that suggests that AI will slowly creep into our lives and it will slowly cause us to utilize our cognitive functions less and less to eventually, cause cognitive decline, kind of like the frog that is in boiling water but doesn't realize it because we only up the temperature a tenth of a degree every day. So the the slow decline in abilities, there is support for this, right? We've seen as in other tech, such as they've done research on TV, social media, internet, text messaging, etc., that spelling abilities are down.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah. Anyone who
obviously,
says any millennial who says they've gotten better at spelling, you're lying.
right? Yeah. So
No way. Unless
yeah,
you take time and practice and work on it. And same with handwriting. Like I've never had good handwriting, but now my
yeah,
handwriting's much worse than it used to be
yeah, yeah.
because I
I
write
feel,
less.
dude, it feels foreign to pick up a pencil these days. You
It
know,
does. It
like
does.
I literally try to write, and I'm like, I've got to concentrate on writing. Like I
Yes.
used to
And
be
I
able
write much
to,
slower.
yeah, 100%. I've noticed that. Like, dude, it's crazy.
You don't use it, you lose it, man, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Um, Now the disintegration, of AI, they worry that it can slowly contribute to the underemployment of these cognitive faculties, which will ultimately lead to reduced attention span, which has been seen in research with TV. So they've noticed with increased TV exposure in children that their attention span worsens. And I think that probably has to do with TV being so stimulating to kids. And then when they're not in front of TV, it's not very
It's
stimulating.
not a stimulant. Yeah.
Right. So that's why their attention decreases so much. Um, Reading comprehension, their AI summarizing everything for everybody. How will this impact reading comprehension? It could definitely slowly degrade our reading comprehension abilities. Uh, they also note that research has found delayed language acquisition with uh, with technology use. So I don't really understand that. I don't know why that would be. I don't have a hypothesis to why that would be, but because I feel like if you're exposed to more media, you're picking up language, right? Like if you're listening to more media, um, so I don't know what the language acquisition argument is, but anyway, they've noticed that an increase in technology use in children is related to decreased language acquisition.
So
Um,
what does that mean? Like smaller vocabulary?
yeah, so it just means like if I give my toddler smartphone or iPod more or iPad more, there's delayed language acquisition for them.
They
And
start learning to speak
right,
later in life.
right. And maybe that's
Hmm.
because the parents aren't paying as much attention to them and they're not engaging in
Yeah,
conversation
not as
really.
much conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
That could be a reason. Um so anyway,
Yeah, it's
also
not like the kid talks back to their iPad. They
right.
just
Right.
take it in. They
Yeah.
don't have to
I
give
guess that's
anything back to
true.
it.
Yeah, difference between language acquisition and language comprehension. So they may be comprehending language faster, possibly by being exposed to media, but they may be acquiring it slower. That's a good point. Um, anyway, so uh, AI chatbots, they say, while assisting in tasks related to reasoning, problem solving, and planning, ultimately may hinder the development of higher cognitive functions, reducing language apprehension, which they've seen in children that's associated with screen time, reduce spatial memory learning. Oh, they've seen this. By the way, this is in the research. Reduced spatial memory has been noted in users and how much they use their GPS when
Hmm.
driving. So
Oh yeah.
we're losing our internal compass essentially due to
So
reliance on
true.
GPS. But
So
I'm gonna,
true.
you know,
That's
my
up
inter-
there with spell check and stuff.
right, but
Like,
in
yeah.
my defense, my internal compass isn't gonna tell me which route has a bunch of traffic on it and which one's the fastest one home. So,
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I don't use the GPS unless I'm going somewhere for the first or second time.
mm,
I call I actively say, "Hey, I'm not using my GPS to get there." I
yeah,
actively try not to use it.
yeah, interesting. I to some degree, I feel like the GPS, and this is, just maybe me personally, because I'm kind of a map geography nerd. I feel like the GPS has helped me in spatial orientation because I see where I am on the map, and then I'm like, okay, yeah, I can tell just by what roads there are and everything that I'm heading north. And then I've learned, like,
Yeah.
okay, this
But to
this
get to the
highway is
specific destination,
right.
it has it declined.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but I know I have a hard fascination with maps, so I even like using the GPS just to see like kind of the map on it.
Hmm.
And I know a lot of people don't have that same fascination. So, um, but there's always the argument that they do know that technology use has been shown to delay this some developmental progression, brain morphology. They've done measurements to see how technology use impacts brain, and they can certainly have found, I don't know how strong the evidence is on this, right? Effect sizes are important, they don't mention that, but they have noted that research has found that uh, cortical thickness in brains are different, sulcal depth, gray matter, and connectivity due to technology exposure and use. But like I said, is this the technology itself, or is it other factors related to heavy tech use, such as sedentary behaviors, depression, uh, tech high tech use can cause insomnia. So you know, hard to say if it's the tech specifically. Um, so ultimately, if this hypothesis is supported, where AI slowly causes a decline in our cognitive abilities, they suggest that regulation of AI chatbot would be important, especially in use in educational contexts. And I'm kids are already using this to write papers, and help them with their assignments. And so, as somebody that that's worked in the education field, that works in academia, like I think that what this is going to cause is you're going to have to change. You can't take away ChatGPT. They're going to use it. You have to find a way to make your assignments uh, to where they can't be completely done by ChatGPT. For example,
Good luck with that.
instead of them writing a research paper on a topic, have them do a presentation and PowerPoint format that they have to give to the class where they can't actually read their PowerPoint, like, the
That's
PowerPoint
smart.
notes, right? They have to get up in
Yeah.
front of class and they have to not be in front of the computer screen and then they have to give it. That would make them have to learn the
Or
material.
memorize it. Just
Yeah.
memorize it.
Well, that at least that's the first level of learning. So at least they're
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
Obviously, ChatGPT isn't going to be able to prepare them for a in-class test. So there's still that component that educators still have. But also, think about it this way. It's not like we haven't been exposed to this before. Um, when Google first came into existence, and you had to write papers on stuff. I remember early on, when I was in junior high, uh, kids would just go to Google, they would type in,
Plagiarize.
yeah, and they would just copy and paste what's written and then turn it in. And there was no plagiarism detection at the time. Now, I don't think they're going to be able to create AI detection. I think maybe they can, but um, what has happened due to Google, especially in the research field, is that the demand of research is much greater than it used to be. So pre-internet, you know, doing a literature review for a study was much thinner. If you look at studies that are, after internet, the literature reviews are much more thorough because it's known that you have way more access to information, so the expectations of what literature you're reviewing is higher. I think that's
Hmm.
what's going to happen here with ChatGPT is like, okay, we have higher expectations for what your assignments are and what could be done because you have this tool. Similar with math and calculators, it's um, the levels of thing equations and things you need to solve is higher because they know you have access to a calculator and you don't have to do everything by hand.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that's a
you
good
know,
point.
we see
I
this
never really thought about it like that.
as a statistician. We've seen this. Like you see this in research. Um, Statistical analyses in modern day research are much more advanced than they were 30 years ago because you have access to
Hmm.
statistical software that runs the analyses for you versus having to do them, all in a very uh, ancient program or by hand. So you see much more advanced models now and analyses than before. So I think that the ChatGPT will push the expectations of work. Now for the
That
next
makes sense.
next hypothesis here, the doom and gloom hypothesis, the hard adjustment hypothesis, what they rightly call it. Like I said, you said before, this is the dystopian scenario where AIs replace all higher level functioning and thinking. So they propose here that in the future you're going to have biosensors hooked up to you where the AI is going to be able to pick up your anxiety levels, what you're thinking essentially, and it's going to be able to make decisions for you based on your feelings. So let's say you're playing poker and you're not sure if you want to go all in or not. The AI may make a decision for you on based on your anxiety levels of saying like, no, your mental state will be shattered if you lose all this money. So do not push all in, right? And then, you'll make the decision because it's what the AI suggested.
Hmm.
Because it will have some kind of ability to detect your mental, state and all that. Um, when choosing what to eat, AI may be telling you like, okay, don't eat this, don't eat this. Your glucose level is too high right now, so eat something that is low low glycemic index. Um, Now, here's the interesting part: will you still have a decision in making that decision, or will the AI implemented in your brain override your own decision making abilities? Like, will Neuralink ultimately make that decision for you
I
instead of
hope
you
not,
making it
man.
yourself? Right.
I
Or,
like I like the freedom to make my own decisions,
yeah,
whether they're
or
good or bad.
you know.
Because
So
yeah.
that, that's another thing about this transhumanism is you don't know the intentions of the developers of the product ultimately and what they may have
Hmm.
planned. Um, so
If I'm gonna make bad decisions, I want to face my own
yeah,
consequences.
of
I'd rather
it,
face my own
um,
than have any decisions made for me.
it, and you know, I agree with you. I'm right there with you. And ultimately, the what could happen here is like we don't even need to speak to communicate. AI just communicates, the AI implant in your brain just communicates with the AI implant in other brains, and all of a sudden we atrophy the area of our brain that is associated with speaking. So, um, and Elon Musk has actually talked about this, about how, his vision is one day that, I believe that this, he's mentioned this, he's talked about this. I'm not sure if this is the vision he wants, but this is what he said is likely to happen, is that we won't be speaking, that we will just be reading our own, everybody's thoughts, being sent out to us through a tech augmentation in our brain. So, and then
Singularity.
right, and then how does that impact ultimately the brain? Will it shrink because we no longer need to speak? Will the AI augmentation in us enhance our physical performance? So like will it be able to like fire our neurons at such a synchronize them to such a rate to where we're able to lift like three times as much as we can without the augmentation, and then will that deplenish our motor skill function, right? Because
Well,
now,
like I think one thing you have to think about, like, okay, the gym, the idea of the gym.
all right,
Back before we had all these tools, nobody needed to go to the gym, right?
yeah,
Now, as we get more AI models, we might have to exercise our brains, you
right.
know, and
Ugh,
to keep
dude,
them functional because so much is offloaded. You might have to go to the gym, but for your brain. And I guess that's school or whatever, but
there's
that's
going to be an
something
app
like
for that.
if it happens to yeah, it's gonna yeah, if it happens too quickly, then we're gonna have a instead of people getting obese, they might just have this rapid cognitive decline. I don't know what can happen, but that's just like what I'm thinking. It's like, oh well, why do we have to go to the gym? Why do we have to force ourselves to work out? It's because we've advanced cars. We don't have to walk places. We don't have to ride our bicycles.
We don't have to
So
hunt our
we
own
have to
food.
force
Yeah,
ourselves to work out. So we're gonna have to eventually maybe force ourselves to use our own brains.
yeah, dude, that's a good point. In fact, maybe you got a good product idea, getting ahead of the curve here. uh, I think you're right.
Yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah.
I
Hey,
think just like I cognitively, during work, get up to go for a 20-minute walk outside because I know my work environment is inside. I don't get enough sunlight exposure. I am,
hmm,
luckily I live in a place that's warm, in Texas most of the year. We don't really have a whole lot of, it's really the summertime is when it's limited to when I can go outside. But then also I walking because I know that I don't get enough steps in a traditional workday
hmm.
unless I do that 20 minutes of walking. And I do additional exercise outside of that. But, you know, if I go to the gym and lift, it's not exactly the same as the tens of thousands of contractions I get on a walk, which is
Yeah,
important for our neurochemical makeup, and so
yeah. No, yeah,
yeah, so good point there. I didn't even think about that. Um,
yeah. We're gonna have to exercise our brains.
so so ultimately here, the authors are like, so how should
And
we?
honestly, I probably should be exercising my brain. I should be practicing my spelling. I should be practicing my handwriting, all the and navigating more without a GPS. I should be doing those things, but the comfort. Why?
Yeah,
I don't need to write anything down.
I'm lucky, right? That my job requires pretty good cognitive demand. Like I've got to read a lot of things, I've got to problem solve. So,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah, for
I'm,
sure.
but, like obviously one reason we're doing this podcast, is because I even myself need more intellectual stimulation than that, right? And
Hmm.
you as well, I'm sure. So, and
Yeah,
I'm
it gets repeated. It's just the same thing over and over again
right,
eventually.
and I know
But the cool
me and
thing about sales is that every client's different that I work with, and they're all challenging in their own way to make that connection. So it's good
Mhm.
for my social skills.
Yeah, yeah, and that there's been jobs where I didn't have to use a lot of social skills, and now in my current job I do. I have to assist a lot of people on their data, and their research planning and so forth. But that is like a tool itself. My social skills are better now than they were in my last job because I do have to talk to people on a more regular basis. Like just that in itself, you will realize that yeah, your social skill does require cognitive abilities for sure, that can be strengthened and weakened with use. Um, anyway, the authors suggest how maybe we need to study this. So they suggest a using a transactive memory system, and really it's a theory in regards to about how people in relationships, teams, or groups know who does what and what they will do. Right. So we engage in this in society, you know, all the time. Like um, we know your role as a salesman, and if I need to buy something, that you're selling, I go to you. That's your
Hmm.
role. That's what you know. If you need data analyzed or research advice, you come to me because that's my role. That's what I do. If you need something with health, you go to a doctor. They suggest looking at AI like this. Essentially, research that's been done on AI has looked at AI used in like groups, and with a group of people, that are trying to problem solve or work on a project, and they notice that groups will use AI uh, as a way to they'll interact with it quite a bit repeatedly, but they use it to encode, store, and modify and retrieve information. So essentially, they're using it to offload ideas, bring back information they found. Kind of like a form of note taking, but not actually, having to write it out and store it in physical form. Um, so, like, look at AI from this perspective first, and then apply a multi-dimensional network perspective, which you know that kind of just means of what select a role for the AI. Does you know changing its role from just a information retrieving device or store to something else, and seeing how that may impact cognitive development in people, how it impacts productivity, how it impacts interaction with other people and the AI. So um, that's how they say to look at it. Don't just let it loose and have it be used for all sorts of things and study it that way. Give it a role and look how it impacts people's brains in X role. Um,
Hmm.
in conclusion, you know, uh, AI they sum up could impact human cognition processes. They kind of supported the zero sum hypothesis in that the negatives and positives will kind of wash themselves out. Um, that's not to say they believe that 100% that hypothesis is correct. It's just the one that they suggest they think is the most likely outcome. Um, but that the widespread population adoption of AI is, and what it may happen, it's uncertain. And assessing the cognitive impacts is complex, obviously, because it's hard to separate the genetic and environmental factors influencing cognitive development, which, as uh, the confounding factor issue. Um, but, examine these hypotheses and future research. And, the question is ultimately, will AI decrease our cognitive capacity, make us into zombies, or will it unlock our brain to do something much greater in the sense that it will offload all these meaningless, exhausting, mentally fatiguing tasks to where we could use our brain capacity for something much greater? That's the ultimate question, and we have yet to find out.
I guess it just depends on whether you're optimistic or pessimistic on what you think is going to happen. I'm optimistic. I think it'll help society and offload a lot of cognitive uh, mundane tasks.
Yeah, so far, my experience with ChatGPT is it's been positive.
Same. I
I
use it
don't
all the time.
I don't feel like it's impacted me for the worse. Um, you know,
Definitely has not impacted me for the worse so
yeah,
far.
I feel like it's enhanced my life in ways, just like the internet I feel like has enhanced my life in ways. But I do know that, there's select people that that's not the case. And sometimes that's
Hmm.
personality, there that's a component to whether these technologies are good or bad is, who's the people accessing it.
So
If you're an addict, if get addicted to things, the internet is not a good tool for you, maybe. But
no, you
uh,
spend too much
uh,
time on it. But okay,
yeah.
what study are we looking at next week? Have we
So
decided?
um, so next week I have to give a presentation on qualitative research for my job, and I'm gonna
Hmm.
upload that presentation, and we'll have it there, so you'll get a good understanding of what qualitative research is. And then we have on the docket a study looking at DEI and racism. So we're going to see what's all the association there between those attitudes towards DEI and racism, and is it good research? Is it faulty research? We'll find out.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll look into that. We'll look into your qualitative research. Is that what you're
Yeah,
explaining?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
if and that may not be for everybody, but if you have an interest in research and the types of research, you know, you may find it interesting. But it will be to help those that are, actual researchers, and those that are just have an interest of what kind of research exists out there.
All right. Well, everybody, goodbye. If you ever want to talk to Ryan on Connect, links in the description. Book a appointment with them, and yeah. Anything else you want to add before we sign off?
Also, we do have a research company, and we do data analysis, research design. So if you have anything, that a project that you're working on and you need advice, or you need help with data analysis, you can send us an email, and we would gladly like to talk to you. And we have a link to our website, which you can reach out to us through there as well. So,
All right. Sign off, everybody. Y'all take care.
all right. Have a good one.